I hope you enjoy my stories. Instead of just clicking thumbs down, please comment and share how we can do better. If you do like our video, then please like and subscribe.
It was a typical Saturday evening, the kind where everyone tried to make the most of the weekend before it slipped away into the Sunday night blues. I was lounging in my room halfway through an episode of my favorite show when the noise started. It wasn't just any noise, it was loud, boisterous laughter and the unmistakable sizzle of a grilling barbecue. My window was open, and the sound drifted in as if there was no barrier between my sanctuary and the source of the racket. Ah, not again, I mumbled to myself as I recognized the familiar banter of my neighbors, the Johnsons. They lived right next door, and they had this habit of throwing these loud backyard barbecues every couple of weeks. It drove me nuts. I got up and went to the window, peeking through the curtains to get a glimpse of the scene. The Johnsons' backyard was alive with people. Mr. Johnson, wearing his signature kiss the cook apron, was manning the grill, while Mrs. Johnson flitted around, setting plates and drinks on a long table. Their 2 kids were running around with the neighborhood children, screaming and laughing like they didn't have a care in the world. I could feel the frustration building up within me. It was just so inconsiderate. Didn't they think about the people trying to have a peaceful evening in their own homes? I couldn't let this slide any longer. I decided to confront them. I stomped downstairs, my annoyance boiling over, and swung open the front door. The sound hit me like a wave. It was even louder outside. I stormed over to the fence that separated my yard from theirs and peeked over. The sight of their carefree fun only fueled my ire. "Hey," I shouted, trying to get someone's attention. But the noise drowned me out. I wasn't about to be ignored. "Hey," I screamed, even louder this time. That did it. Heads turned in my direction, and the chatter began to die down. Mrs. Johnson walked over, a polite but strained smile on her face. "Oh, hi, Karen. How's it going?" she said as if nothing was wrong. "Not great, Susan," I started, trying to keep my voice steady. "The noise is unbearable. Some of us would like to enjoy our evening in peace." Susan's smile wavered. "Oh, I'm sorry, Karen. We didn't realize it was that loud. We'll try to keep it down. Trying isn't good enough." I snapped, my patience wearing thin. "This has been going on for months. Tonight, it's especially disruptive. If you don't stop, I'm going to call the police." Her eyes widened slightly, surprised at the escalation. "Karen, that's really not necessary. We're just having a small gathering, really. No need to get the authorities involved." "A small gathering? It sounds like Woodstock over here," I retorted. "Either you end this now, or I'm dialing 911. She hesitated for a second, then nodded reluctantly. "All right, Karen, we'll end the party. I'm really sorry for disturbing you." I felt a twisted sort of triumph as I watched her walk back to the group and start telling them it was time to wrap it up. Slowly, people began to disperse, grumbling and gathering up their things. Part of me felt a bit bad for ruining their fun, but another part of me, the larger part, was relieved that I'd finally have some peace and quiet. I went back inside, feeling victorious. I returned to my room and settled back into my show, content with my achievement. The evening was quiet, just as I'd wanted it to be. However, the following week brought an unexpected twist. I came home from running errands to find a letter from the Homeowners Association in my mailbox. Curious, I opened it and was stunned by what I read. "Dear Karen, it has come to our attention that you have lodged several noise complaints against your neighbors, the Johnsons. After careful consideration and reviewing the situation, we have decided that your complaints are unfounded and rather disruptive to community harmony. We recognize the importance of peaceful coexistence and encourage residents to resolve minor disputes amicably. Continuous disagreement amongst neighbors can lead to unnecessary friction in our pleasant community. Furthermore, directly resorting to threats of police involvement over minor issues is considered inappropriate. We urge you to reconsider your approach to future situations. Sincerely, Neighborhood Homeowners Association." I was furious. How could they possibly consider my complaints unfounded? The noise was unbearable. I had every right to demand peace in my own home. Determined to not let this slide, I decided to speak with the HOA president directly. After a few phone calls, I managed to arrange a meeting with Mr. Stevens, the current HOA president. He was an older man, always prim and proper, with an air of authority about him. When I arrived at his house, he greeted me cordially and led me to his study. "Karen, what's seems to be the problem?" he asked, as if he didn't already know. "It's those Johnsons," I started, trying to keep my cool but failing miserably. "Their barbecues are way too loud. They have no consideration for the other residents. I'm constantly disturbed by their noise." Mr. Stevens looked at me, his expression unreadable. "Karen, I understand your frustration, but the Johnsons' gatherings are within reasonable hours. They're not breaking any rules. They've been cooperative and respectful about your concerns, but I think you also need to adjust a bit." "Adjust how?" I snapped. "Do you expect me to just live with the noise?" "Karen," he said slowly, "community living requires flexibility and understanding. We've received several complaints from other neighbors about your confrontational behavior. We can't have that kind of hostility here." "Hostile? They're loud, I complain, and I'm the hostile one." I felt my blood boiling. "Karen, I suggest you maybe take some time to cool off and reconsider your stance," Mr. Stevens advised. "We don't want this to escalate further. If this continues, we might have to take action." It felt like I had hit a brick wall. No one was on my side. Not the HOA, not the neighbors. No one. I stormed out of Stevens' house, feeling more isolated than ever. The weeks that followed were tense. I avoided eye contact with the neighbors, and they did the same with me. It was clear that the word had spread about my complaints, and now I was the outcast. Then, disaster struck. One afternoon, I noticed the HOA members gathered outside my house, whispering to each other and casting quick glances my way. I had a sinking feeling in my stomach and hurried outside to see what was going on. Mr. Stevens approached me, holding an official-looking document. "Karen, we're here to inform you that due to multiple complaints about your hostile behavior and refusal to cooperate with community guidelines, we are imposing a fine. Additionally, if the behavior continues, we may consider more severe actions." I was dumbfounded. "You're fining me? For what?" "For disturbing the peace and harmony of our community," he replied firmly. "You need to learn to coexist with your neighbors, Karen." Seething, I grabbed the document and stormed back inside my house. This was getting out of hand. I couldn't believe how things had turned against me. All I wanted was some peace and quiet. That night, as I lay in bed, I could hear the faint sounds of another gathering, but this time it wasn't coming from the Johnsons. It was from another house a few doors down. It seemed like everyone in the neighborhood was getting together, except me. I realized, with a heavy heart, that I had isolated myself. My insistence on quiet had made me the noise everyone wanted to avoid. I felt a throb of regret for how I'd handled the situation, but it was too late to change anything now. The barbecues continued. The laughter and chatter filled the air, but my house remained silent and lonely. The silence I had fought for had become a prison, making me realize that some noise was better than none at all. In the end, I was left with only my quiet house as my companion, while the community thrived and bonded just outside my reach.
It started as just another sunny Saturday at my high-end salon. I've run the place for close to 8 years now. And one thing I've learned is that you never know what kind of mood someone is going to walk through the door with. But this day would be one for the books. So, around 11 a.m., in walks Karen. Now, you probably know the type. Perfectly coiffed hair, designer clothes that screamed, "I have money and I want you to know it," and an air of entitlement that could choke you. The bell above the door jingled as she strutted inside, giving a quick glance around the salon. Her nose slightly crinkled, as if she was already dissatisfied. I greeted her with my usual, "Welcome to Lux Salon. How can we help you today?" She barely glanced at me and mumbled something about wanting a color job. I could see from the corner of my eye that Stacy, our top stylist, had just finished with a client and was heading her way. Stacy is one of the most talented stylists in town. She's got that touch, you know? She can look at you and just know the exact cut and color that will look fabulous. So, when Karen plopped down in her chair and started flipping through the hair color samples, I had no doubt that Stacy would be able to handle her. But things went south fast. After a few minutes of evaluating Karen's current hair situation, Stacy gently suggested, "I think a darker shade would really complement your complexion. Maybe we could try a deep chestnut." Karen's face reddened, and she snapped her head up, glaring at Stacy. "I want platinum blonde," she declared, her voice dripping with condescension. "I know what I want, and you need to do your job." It was loud enough that half the salon turned to look. The atmosphere shifted, and you could cut the tension with a knife. Stacy's smile faltered, but she remained professional. "Of course, if that's what you prefer. I just think—" "I didn't ask what you think," Karen interrupted. "Just do it." Stacy shot me a look, her eyes practically screaming for patience. I nodded subtly, hoping to convey my support. As Stacy set to work, Karen continued to mutter under her breath, making snide comments about the salon, the products we used, and even the other clients. I could see my regulars starting to look uncomfortable. Mrs. Jenkins, who has been getting her hair set here every Saturday for a decade, gave me a raised eyebrow. I knew what she was thinking. This wasn't what she signed up for when she walked in for her weekly pamper session. About 45 minutes into the process, Karen's criticisms only grew louder. "Are you sure you know what you're doing?" she barked at Stacy. "This doesn't look right at all. I bet they don't even train you properly here." By now, Stacy's hands were visibly shaking, and I had enough. I walked over and tapped Karen on the shoulder. "Ma'am, you're making the experience very unpleasant for our staff and other patrons," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "Excuse me," Karen snapped, standing up and facing me. She was a good foot shorter than me, but you'd think she was 10 feet tall from the way she squared her shoulders. "Are you saying I'm the problem here?" "Yes, actually, I am," I replied. "We've tried to accommodate your requests, but your behavior is unacceptable." Karen huffed and puffed, her face now an alarming shade of red. "I want to speak to the owner," she demanded. I crossed my arms and gave her a steely look. "You're looking at him, and I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Her mouth fell open. "You can't do that. I demand a refund." "Considering we haven't finished your service, there's nothing to refund," I said, pointing towards the door. "Please leave now." Instead of leaving, Karen started making an even bigger scene, yelling, throwing the product samples across the room, and just being downright belligerent. I didn't want to do it, but she left me no choice. I called the cops. When they arrived, she was still in mid-rampage. They calmly asked her to leave, and when she refused, they gently but firmly escorted her out. The relief in the salon was palpable. Deep breaths, hushed whispers, and even a few laughs broke out once the door swung shut behind her. Stacy looked like she was going to cry. "I'm so sorry," she kept saying, her hand trembling as she ran it through her hair. "You have nothing to be sorry about," I assured her. "Some people just can't be pleased." Mrs. Jenkins came up to the front, a fresh cup of our herbal tea in her hands, and patted Stacy's arm. "You did just fine, dear. Don't let that one bad apple spoil your barrel." I gave Mrs. Jenkins a grateful nod and then turned to face the rest of my team. "All right, everyone, let's get back to doing what we do best. We can't let people like her get us down." The day continued on much smoother after that. Word about the salon screech spread quickly among the regulars, and it almost became a bit of a joke. "Better behave, or you'll end up like Karen," they'd tease. But here's the thing. While I wouldn't wish that kind of encounter on anyone, it reinforced something important for me. This salon isn't merely a place to get your hair done. It's a sanctuary, a place where people come to feel good about themselves. And no one, no matter how much they demand it, has the right to ruin that for others. So, did Karen get what she wanted? Not by a long shot. In fact, she got herself banned from the best salon in town and probably a not-so-nice note on her record. But for the rest of us, we got a hair-raising lesson about standing up for what's right, even when it might be easier to keep our heads down. And that, my friends, is worth its weight in platinum blonde. I've been working here at Sunnyvale Amusement Park for a good 5 years. And let me tell you, I've seen all kinds of characters come through. But there ain't been nothing quite like that afternoon Karen decided our park was her personal playground. My name's Tony, and I'm a ride operator here. Been doing this for a while now. You learn to handle stuff, you know. But, man, she was something else. It was a sweltering summer day, the kind where you can feel the sweat dripping down your back before you even finish your coffee. The park was packed with families and kids. Everyone just trying to grab a piece of fun before school started back up. I was stationed over at the Mega Whirl, our big roller coaster that folks line up for hours to get on. The lines were snacking around the metal barriers, kids buzzing with excitement, parents trying to keep it together. Then out of nowhere, I see her, Karen. She's marching up to the front of the line, shouldering past folks like she owns the place. She's got this real determined look on her face, hair bobbing as she strides, designer sunglasses perched on her head like a crown. "Excuse me, I have a medical condition, and I can't wait in lines," she announces loud enough for Canada to hear. Everyone just kind of stares at her, dumbfounded for a second. It ain't every day someone just jumps the line like that. A dad in a Hawaiian shirt pipes up, "We've been here for an hour. If you have a condition, You should have gone through guest services and gotten a pass. Karen snaps her head towards him, eyes blazing. I shouldn't need to explain myself to you. You're not a doctor. The crowd starts murmuring now, folks shuffling and exchanging those looks. You know the kind. How dare she? I figure it's time for me to step in before things get real out of hand. I walk up to her, trying to keep my cool. Ma'am, if you have a medical condition, you need to get a special access pass from guest services. You can't just cut in line. She glares at me, like she's drilling holes through my skull. Listen, I don't need to be schooled by you. I paid good money to be here, and I'm not going to stand around in this heat all day. I take a deep breath, steady myself. I understand, ma'am, but these folks have also paid and waited their turn. We have procedures for situations like this. I can get someone from guest services to assist you. Before I could even finish, she's turned to the crowd and yelled, "This is discrimination. I'm being discriminated against because of my medical condition." Man, now it's really going. Parents are covering their kids' ears. People are pulling out their phones, getting ready to record what they think is going to be a juicy viral moment. I flag down my buddy Dave from the hot dog stand nearby, tell him to get security. Karen's still going off, and the noise she's causing attracts Ronnie, our lead security guy. Ronnie's seen his share of trouble, but I can see the moment he spots Karen. That flash in his eyes that says, "Oh great, one of these." Ronnie approaches her, firm but polite. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come with me to guest services. They'll sort everything out for you." Karen steps back, almost trips over a little kid's foot. This is unbelievable. I want to speak to the manager. Folks in the crowd snicker at that. Guess they're thinking of all those memes and internet jokes. But ain't nothing funny when you're dealing with it in real life. Let me tell you. Ronnie's not a man to be messed with, though. "Ma'am, walk with me now, or I'll have to escort you out of the park." She turns red as a tomato but relents, following Ronnie. The line starts moving again, and I think we're in the clear. But nah, that's wishful thinking. Turns out, guest services checks her records and finds she's pulled this stunt before. Not just here but at other parks, too. They deny her the special pass. Now, you'd think she'd cool down, maybe leave, but she doubles down, storming back towards the mega whirl with even more fire. She tried to slip back in, but this time, Ronnie's ready. He grabs her by the arm, gentle but firm. Karen's hollering about lawsuits and her rights, drawing even more attention. Kids are crying, parents are yelling, it's a real circus. Ronnie leads her out of the park, and Karen's banshee wails echo eerily until she's finally out of sight. Some families cheer and clap, but the damage is done. The mood is soured. Kids who were buzzing minutes ago now look deflated and worn down by all the commotion. I can't help but feel bad for the families who had to witness the whole mess. Little Jimmy, who'd been waiting all summer to ride the mega whirl, now looks like he's going to burst into tears. I hand him a free ride voucher and tell him he can come back anytime. It cheers him up a bit. Later, we find out that Karen tried to give a phony name and address to guest services, probably worried we'd report her. Guess what? We did. She's now banned for life from all Sunnyvale parks. Good riddance, we all said. By the time the park closes, I'm wiped. I sit on a bench, watching the sun dip behind the Ferris wheel, thinking about the day. I've seen lines cut before, seen folks holler, but Karen took the cake. She disrupted the whole park, upsetting kids and parents alike. And in the end, she got what was coming to her. I guess you think you've seen it all, and then someone like Karen shows up to remind you that people can always surprise you. Not always in a good way. The park will bounce back. It always does. Tomorrow's another day of laughter, rides, and, who knows, maybe even a few more Karens. But today was something else for sure.
I would like to thank you for watching the video to the end. To encourage us to make more videos, please like, subscribe, comment, as well as share. Check out this other video if you haven't already.